Hello mate, and welcome back to this Blender tutorial. This time we're going to be looking at how to make vegetation. Super easy. This is literally take you about 20 seconds by the time you get used to it. As you can see, I've got an example of one here on the screen. What you need to do is get yourself on Google Images and find yourself some PNG files of plants. Failing that, you can always take your own and cut them out by masking them in Photoshop or any other image editing tool. It's dead easy. All you have to do is just get rid of any stuff that's not the plant in the image. So I'm going to swing around so that I can see my world origin here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in an image that I have found, and this is of a fern. I'm just going to drag that in there, and as you can see at the moment it's freaking massive, and it's also currently considered to be a reference image. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to convert that into a mesh plane and just hit OK, just like we did before. And now you can see that it has basically changed into a mesh, and also our rotation is a little bit ski with, so we can just make sure we've got that selected and hit item, and we can just rotate or reset our rotation like that, just like we did in the previous tutorial where we made a sign. Then I'm just going to rotate it on the x-axis by 90, and then I'm going to actually go to front view, and you can see that this plant currently is about 4 meters across, which is way too big. So I'm just going to hit S and I'm going to scale it down. Realistically, this plant doesn't want to be any bigger than a meter, which is one of these divisions across. So I'm going to scale that a little bit smaller, because if this was a gaming world, the player is going to be able to walk up and through these things. If it's too big, they're just going to see pixelation, and that maybe that's what you're going for, but probably not. So now we can just press G to grab it and then press Z to move it in the Z axis, and we can just make sure that we've got most of the stems touching the ground. Now, obviously IRL this wouldn't actually be a very functional plant because it's got a load of stems sticking out the ground, but for the purposes of a really basic plant in a game world that the player's not going to be focusing too much on these, this will work just fine. So now if we rotate it, you can see because I've got a sun in my scene, we're already getting a shadow cast on it. One side is lighter than the other. We're good to go. Next thing I want to do is I want to duplicate this. So I'm going to press Shift and D, and then I'm just going to press Escape. That means that I've created a copy of it in place. Then I'm going to press R and Z, and I'm just going to rotate this maybe 90 degrees, maybe a bit more. And then I'm going to repeat that process again, Shift and D, and then Escape, and then R and Z to rotate it a little bit more, maybe come around to this angle. And I might just do that one more time, Shift D, Escape, RZ, and then I can just find an angle that hasn't got very much. There you go, that works fine. Okay, so now we've got a what we would call a billboard plant. Now, as you can see, I've actually got two copies pretty close to each other here. So I'm just going to do an RZ, and I'm actually going to rotate this more in this direction, and that'll work just fine. There we go. So I've got 4 copies or 4 versions of this. If I select them all in my inspector up here, you can see that they're all separate objects. Now if I have them all selected and I press Ctrl and J, I can now turn those into a single object, and then I can just call this bush. Then what I want to do is I want to set the origin of this object so that it's at the bottom of the plants, not in the middle of the plants. That's going to make copying this and duplicating it and placing it around much easier. So again, I'm going to go into front view by pressing the 1 key, and that will show us where the world origin is. If I press / for a minute, you can actually hide everything else. So all I can see now is the plant that I've created. So I'm going to press G and Z to move it up so that the world origin is where I want the origin of this object to be. I'm also going to press G and X just to make sure that it's centered a little bit better. That's probably about as good as it's going to get. And then I'm just going to right click on the object and set origin to 3D cursor like so. And now I can press / again, and then when I come back into the world, that is going to have moved because we did move it, but the origin is now in the correct place. So now I can just press G and Z again, Bring that back down so that it meets my terrain. But anytime I duplicate this, if I want to snap it to the surface that it's on, it will now snap correctly because the origin of the object is in the right place. Whereas previously you would have had to have corrected it. And then if we deselect our object, you can actually come in close, and it actually looks pretty good for a small bush that's going to be in a gaming world. This is pretty much how even the AAA games make their bushes still for standard vegetation. They'll only add huge amounts of geometry to plants that are large and that the player is going to be looking at with any real scrutiny. For the kind of vegetation that's just going to be used as clutter and background noise, they still use this billboarding effect where they just create 3D plants that way. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Thanks very much for watching. I will see you in the next one, but until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, all right? Bye bye.